Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Festmeyer. In this lesson, I'm going to walk you through how I approach E-form, diatonic 7th chord arpeggios, and major keys on the guitar. Now, if you haven't checked out my video on the 7 positions of the major scale, be sure to do that before you start with this lesson. Now, first of all, what is an E-form chord? I'm going to come over here to the guitar and I'm just going to play a basic open E chord. Now I'm using my first, second, and third fingers to do that. I'm going to switch to my second, third, and fourth, but play exactly the same notes. E chord. Now if I take this chord and I move it, all my fingers up by 1 fret, and then I bar at the first fret, I've essentially transposed the E chord up 1/2 step, and now it's an F chord. Now I can move this chord to any fret on the guitar, and it then becomes whatever note that I have on the low E string. So for example, if I move this up to here, my first finger is now on a G on the low E string, so now this is a G major chord. If I move it up 2 more frets, my first finger is now on an A, so it's an A major chord. Come up here to the 8th fret with my first finger on a C, and now it's a C major bar chord. So these are all in the E form, but I could basically play any major chord. Now the arpeggios will basically relate to that E form chord. Now that we're going to be doing E form 7th chord arpeggios in major keys, we need to learn 4 different arpeggio shapes because that's what we'll need for any major key. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these on C just for now so that we can compare. We need a major 7, a dominant 7, a minor 7, and a minor 7 flat 5, which is also called a half diminished 7th chord. A major 7 chord consists of a major triad with an added major 7th interval above the root of the chord. So the major triad on C would be C, E, G. The major 7 above the root, so C is the root. The major 7 above that would be a B natural, so that is the added note for the 7th. So we have C, E, G, and B natural to get our C major 7 chord. So I'm going to come up here, put my first finger on C, just like I had with that E form bar chord. And I'm going to play a C note, followed by an E note up here at the 12th fret with my pinky. So 2 notes on the low E string. Next I'm going to play a G here at the 10th fret and a B on the D string at the 9th fret with my second finger. That gives me the first octave of the arpeggio, C, E, G, B. Now I'm going to do that again, just an octave higher. To do that, I need my ring finger on a C on the D string at the 10th fret, middle finger on an E on the G string, first finger on a G on the B string, and then I'll reach up and grab a B with my pinky at the 12th fret. So that second octave is C, E, G, B. So I've got C, E, G, B, C, E, G, B. Then the high E string, I will add just another C and an E, same as the low E string, just 2 octaves higher. So the whole thing is this. And I can play a descending as well. The next one we'll check out is the dominant 7th chord. A dominant 7th chord is a major triad with an added minor 7 interval above the root of the chord. So the major triad on C would be C, E, G again, but instead of having a B like the major 7 chord, we're going to lower that by a 1/2 step to B flat. So we get C, E, G, B flat for a C dominant 7 chord. Now comparing these arpeggios, the only thing that changes is the B's from the major 7 chord become B flats for the dominant 7 chord. On the major 7 chord we had 2 B's. We have one here at the 9th fret of the D string, one here at the 12th fret of the B string. Both of those will now move back by 1/2 step, and that will be the only change from the major 7 to the dominant 7. So it looks like this: C, E, G note on the A string, then my first finger on a B flat, so that's the first octave, C, E, G, B flat. Then I get another C, E, G, B flat, C, E, middle finger, first finger on G, and then my pinky reaches up to a B flat at the 11th fret. Then on the high E string, it's just the same as the low E string, just 2 octaves higher, C and E. So the dominant 7 arpeggio on C is this. Okay, next up is the minor 7 arpeggio. A minor 7 chord has a minor triad plus a minor 7. So a minor triad would be C, E flat, and G. And then the minor 7 is the same as with the dominant 7 chord. It's a B flat note. C, E flat, G, B flat. So again, I'm staying in the same position. I'm going to play C, E flat with my pinky now with the 11th fret, G on the A string, B flat on the D string. So that's the first octave, C, E flat, G, B flat. Second octave is C, first finger on the E flat, now at the 8th fret of the G string. I'm going to roll that finger over and catch the G here on the B string, and then reach up to that B flat note. So that middle portion again is C on the D string, 10th fret, E flat, 8th fret, G roll over at the 8th fret on the B string, and then B flat with the pinky. High E string again, same as the low E string, C and E flat. So for the minor 7 arpeggio, we get C, E flat, G, B flat, C, E flat, G, B flat, C, E flat. Now our fourth 7th chord type that we need for a major scale is the minor 7 flat 5, also known as the half diminished 7 chord. So minor 7 flat 5 describes it really well. Basically, we're taking that minor 7 arpeggio that we just did, and we're taking the 5th of the chord, the G, and we're flatting it. Basically, we're lowering it by 1/2 step. So we're going to do C, E flat, just like the minor 7 arpeggio. But instead of G, we're doing G flat, and then we're doing B flat. So the notes of that chord are C, E flat, G flat, and B flat. C, E flat, G flat with my second finger, B flat with the first finger. Now there are a couple of different ways to play the next portion of the arpeggio. I could go C here with my ring finger, E flat with my first finger, and then do sort of a funny bar with my pinky, play a G flat here at the 11th fret of the G string, and then roll that finger over to a B flat, also on the 11th fret on the B string. It's a little bit awkward to do that, but it works reasonably well. And then I would have the C and the E flat up on top, just like on the bottom. So here's that version of the arpeggio. Bar the pinky. The other way to do that is to put the G flat here on the B string, and then we don't have that awkward rolling of the pinky. The fingering needs to be a little bit different for that, so I'm going to play the first part the same. C, E flat, G flat, B flat. But then I'm going to move my pinky to C, so that's a little bit different. Move my second finger to E flat, and first finger to G flat. So here I get this shape. The pinky would then reach up to B flat, and then my high E string would be the same. So I get this. Okay, both arpeggio types are perfectly valid. You could go ahead and choose which one you prefer. Okay, now that we've compared all those different types of 7th chord arpeggios, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, and minor 7 flat 5, we're going to go ahead and work those through the major scale. I encourage you to practice those shapes and get them well memorized before moving on to this next step. So what we're going to do is we're going to stay here because we're going to work in the key of C. The first chord in any major scale is a major 7 chord. We call that Roman numeral 1, major 7. So I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that one that we already learned. C, E, G, B, C, E, G, B. Okay, so that's the 1 chord. Now moving on to the 2 chord, the second note of the C major scale is D. In a major key, the second chord is always a minor 7 chord. So we already learned the minor 7 arpeggio. This time I'm going to do it on D. Now it's helpful to know what those notes are, but if I just play that correct shape, I will have the correct notes. By the way, the notes of a D minor 7 are D, F, A, and C. So that shape is this. Okay, next up is the 3 chord. I'm moving up to the third note of the scale, C, D, E, and that is also a minor 7. So here I'm going to use that same shape that I used on D. For the 3 chord. Now, by the way, the notes of an E minor 7 are E, G, B, and D. Now, the 4 chord comes next. The fourth note of a C major scale is F, C, D, E, F. The 4 chord in a major key is a major 7 arpeggio. And we already played a major 7 on C, so now I'm going to play a major 7 here on F. First finger of the 13th fret of an F note, and I get this. Now I could also play that back here at the first fret. Anywhere where my first finger is on the low E string on F note, I could play that same basic shape. Now moving on to the 5 chord. The 5 chord in any major key is a dominant 7th chord. In the key of C, the 5th note is G. So I'm going to move my first finger to a G. I could play it here. I could also play it way up here. I'm going to go ahead and play it here for our demonstration. And I'm going to play that dominant 7 shape. Now, by the way, the notes of the G dominant 7 are G, B, D, and F. Now, moving on to the 6th chord. 6th chord is always a minor 7 chord in a major key. The 6th note of C is A, so I'm going to bring my first finger here to A. I'm going to play that minor 7 shape. So I'm going to play this. Now, by the way, the notes of an A minor 7 are A, C, E, and G. Now, finally, I'm at the 7 chord. The 7 chord is that minor 7 flat 5 chord, also again known as the half diminished 7 chord. The 7th note of the C major scale is B, so I bring my first finger here to B. I'm going to go ahead and choose one of those arpeggio shapes that we learned just a few minutes ago. There I use the shape where I rolled my pinky, or I can also use this shape. Move my pinky. And then that returns me back to C, where the 1 chord would be. Okay, so those are all the diatonic 7th chords in the key of C major. Now this could be applied to any major key, so it's important to understand all of your major scales, know what your major key signatures are, and therefore to be able to figure out what the notes of any major scale would be. And then if you follow those notes on the low E string, you can work through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chords within that key. So for example, if I come here to the key of G, the 1 chord in the G major scale would be a major 7 chord, just like the 1 chord in a C major scale. So I'll play this. The 2 chord is minor 7. The 2nd note in the G major scale is A. The 3 chord is a minor 7. The 3rd note in the G scale is B. So you get the idea. So basically following the notes on the low E string, I find all the notes in the G scale and I work through those different shapes that correspond to those chords. All right, that's it for this lesson. In the next video, we're going to move on to A form diatonic 7th chords. Then we're going to take the E and the A forms and combine them and start to apply them to some actual music. Thank you for watching.